When Bushwalking by Vicki from Orange 2800. Narrated by Lex Marinos. Warramba Both rose, a grey and white beast, behind fringes of gum trees. A kangaroo grazed, Joey's head peeking from her pouch. Kookaburras, currawongs, and other birds flitted through palms and cycads. Ferocious sun meant few bushwalkers were out in Carnarvon Gorge this afternoon. Most walked early in the day. Edward Bonington sighed and wiped his brow with a large handkerchief. He should have arrived earlier at his destination, having departed from Injune in plenty of time. He blamed the road leading in from the highway. Its deplorable condition meant that he could not accelerate at a decent pace. He sighed. This heat is intense. That palm is a most interesting specimen of Macrozemia moriae. Zamia palm? He drew sips of water from his canteen and strolled on. Bob Johnson gulped his water, eyeing the scene. The sandstone showed amazing colour in the vertical rock face to his left. Phew, it's hot. Should have been here earlier. Oh well. Need to let the kids have fun. Best get on though. Only got today. Geoghegan Firth hitched his pack over Scrawny's shoulders, flicking his ponytail out of the way. Hey man, heat's a shocker. Bloody lucky I went up the gorge already. Man. Geoghegan slurped his water and tramped on. The track into the gorge crossed Carnarvon Creek via a series of stepping stones and wound up steep steps. Here, trees and ferns cast shade over the path. Edward admired Livistona nitida, or Carnarvon fan palms, spotted along the way. Not his specialty, but he was aware of their uniqueness and place in the fragile ecosystem of the gorge. Crossing the creek again, a sign directed him to a side gorge and the moss garden. Edward relished the coolness under rock overhangs as he climbed numerous steps. He noticed a different microsite had developed below the shelter of tall cliff walls, where prevailed a moister environment. Moss-covered rocks appeared. Trickles of water ran down slopes, racing to join the bigger creek below. After a while, rocks and steps gave way to a timber walkway. A waterfall tumbled over the ledge into a pool, a lush green oasis, cocooned in moss and lichen and ferns. He sank gratefully into a seat, sighing with pleasure. Bob enjoyed his ramble along the creek, frequently splashing water on his face. Clear as a bell, even tiny fish. Pity Anne isn't bushwalking, doesn't know what she's missing. Ah, the moss garden. Heard that's special. He climbed the steps, soaking up the cool dampness. Out of breath, he reached the garden and sat near Edward. Edward inclined his head. Good afternoon, he greeted Bob. G'day. Bit warm, isn't it, mate? The temperature is on the upper side, Edward agreed. Geoghegan maintained his slow, meandering pace, stopping frequently to gaze at the cliffs or sit beneath a palm. He'd drop into the moss garden, good place for meditation. 2 men were there. Hey, man, how you doing? Cool place, eh? Geoghegan sat cross-legged on the boardwalk. Edward gazed at the young man. It is a relief from this perpetual heat. Where are the crazy ones? Bob offered. Couldn't get away earlier. Kids wanted pancakes for brekkie. Couldn't say no on holidays, could I? Name's Bob, by the way. Geoghegan, the young fellow said. Yeah, hot as hell today. Better up at Big Bend. The oldest stared. My name is Edward Bonington. You were in the upper gorge? Where did you sleep? There's no accommodation. Me tent. Geoghegan indicated his pack. Gotta have time in the gorge. Didn't need it. Too warm. Slept in the amphitheatre. That's a buzz. Been in the gallery this morning. Great stencils. Aboriginals knew what they were doing. This place, he said. Something to do with secret women stuff? Interesting, said Bob. I didn't know that. Heard about the stencils, so I'm heading there next. Edward took a magnifying glass from his pocket and peered closely at the moss. I prefer to note the species of moss and lichen here, as I'm a botanical scientist. In this gorge, there are remnants of rainforest from 40 million years ago, rainforest that has disappeared due to climate change. Some of these species exist nowhere else. It is an unusual sight. Bob said. The moss and lichen make it green and lush, an enchanted place. My kids would say fairies live here. Too right, Gagan twisted. Dreamtime tells of Mundugara, rainbow serpent, who made the gorge. 'Twas a spirit place. Their history goes back 20,000 years, I read. Bob stretched his legs. Yeah, man. Long time. Stencils and art. 2,000 sorts. Pretty neat. Where you staying, man? Caravan at the resort. Been on holidays. Head back to Brisbane tomorrow. I myself am at the lodge. Edward peered closely at the lichen. I require more comforts than your tent can provide, young man. Gagan laughed. All I can do. No money, man. Backpacking my way around Oz. I'm glad I saw this place, Bob said, rising. Better go see the gallery. Thanks for the info, Gagan. An unusual name. Means sky. Ma's a bit of a hippie. Enjoy the stencils, man. Thanks. Bye, Edward. Edward proffered his hand. Travel with safety. Bob left, leaving the others to silence. Gagan closed his eyes in meditation. Edward continued his study of the moss and lichen, taking detailed notes and photographs. He planned to write a paper when he returned to his office. Hours later, he finished and decided that he must depart if he wished to reach his abode before dark. Farewell, he said. I hope it will not storm tonight whilst you repose in your tent. Gagan opened his eyes. That's cool, man. Used to it. Edward departed, carefully negotiating the steps down to the creek. The heat was diminished. Even so, he'd be more comfortable when he was in air conditioning. Odd young man, he thought, climbing into his car. It was strange, the different people you encountered when you went bushwalking. The end.